actually something I think it could be useful at some point. We're going to go step by step. I'm also going to wait for you in case you want to follow the contents there. Let me change the slide here. So, okay. As you can see, this is going to be a 2-hour session. We are going to start from scratch. So we will have the chance to define and configure a development environment. We are going to use Docker today to do that. And also, you have the links here to the code and the slides. I'm actually going to copy that to you. If I could. Let me copy that. I'm going to paste that in the chat we have there in Ring Central. Okay, so let me open the chat. Let's see where it is. Okay, there it is. So this is the link to the slides. Sorry, this is the repo we're going to use today. The repo has a branch there. If we follow it, let me open that and move a screen here on the right. So if you see the repo has 2 branches, a master branch and a workshop 1 branch. All the code, at least an interpretation of the code we are going to do today is going to be here in workshop 1. You can follow the code just by looking at the comments here on the right. Or this is actually what I'm going to do. Or you can basically start from master and create your own blank project right from start and follow me as I code. I would recommend you to do this if you have a chance, because I think, well, I remember doing this the first years I was attending to CakeFest, and that was very helpful on for my training. So I would strongly recommend you to, if you have a development environment available, just use it and go ahead with the contents. It is a pretty standard environment, so I hope you can follow from here. But I'm going to explain step by step, so don't worry. So if you see, we also have a link to the database and a link to the slides. I'm going to copy the link to the slides because that's the other one that could be useful at this point. And getting it there, you're getting the links and everything, right? I think I'm using the general chat there in Ring Central. If you want to ask me anything, please do it right away. Don't wait to the end till the end of the session or wait for later. Just you can freely go and post your question there in Ring Central. I would like you to understand everything I'm doing. So this workshop is intended not to finish, but for everybody to understand all the steps I'm doing, right? For me, the main priority here is that you don't get lost for everything I'm doing. So if you ever get lost, just go there to Ring Central chat or just go to the Q&A, raise your hand, ask a question, and I will try to stop and explain, okay? Also, my voice is not 100% today, so I'm going to be chewing things through the session. So then, so first step is going to be setting up a project from scratch. Let me go there in my site. Well, this is about me. This is my contact. So if you want to contact me, that's my email. So what are we going to do today? In the first workshop is a PDF search application. So it's going to be a small, a very small application, toy application to play with 2 plugins that are out there under the Cake PHP umbrella. But one of them is new and another one is there for some time already. I think those are very cool plugins that are not so widely mentioned in Slack channel or other places. So I think I'm taking this opportunity to promote these 2 plugins and do something with them. So what we are going to do is actually we're going to create an application where we can upload a file It's going to be a PDF file, but we can change it later. We're going to be able to upload it. We're going to be able to process it using a queue and through a worker and a job. And then we are going to be able to connect to an Elasticsearch server to index the contents of the file. The PDF processing will be basically extracting all the text that are in images. So we can actually not only extract with other tools the text layers that are in the PDF, that is, we are not going to do that today. But today we are going to do extraction using an OCR, which is called Tesseract, and it works out of the box. So it also allows you to do heavy configuration and train it. But for today, we're going to just cover a couple examples with it. Okay. So first thing is setting up a development environment, like always. So I'm going to start by running my Visual Studio Code, which is not my first IDE, by the way. So it can be a little bit clumsy today using it, but this is what we have. So I'm gonna start by creating a project from scratch. So it's gonna be like a composer, create project, PHP, right? So after creating a blank project, skeleton, using Composer, I understand that everybody did this. Is there anybody here? Well, usually one question I usually do in the trainings is to rate yourself 1 to 10 as you think yourself familiar with Cake PHP. You can do that in the chat if you want, so you can see more or less the average we have in the session today. Rate 1 if you're a beginner, if you're just starting with a framework. Rate 10 if you know everything about it. So just post it there if you would like to in the chat, so you can see that. And meanwhile, yep, we just set up a project from scratch, project skeleton. If you go there, the default name is app. You see here's all the files created from the Cake PHP app application skeleton. You have a reference to that application here in GitHub. So if you go and take a look at it, it is under Cake PHP app. Basically what we did is to clone or to download this set of files and then inspect Composer JSON to pull the require and require dev dependencies into our project. So all these packages and all the dependencies of all these packages are downloaded, and we have all of this there in our local folder. So the next thing is, how can we start a server, or how can we define what is going to be our environment? Keep in mind that today we are going to play with Elasticsearch and other things. So, okay, I see people answering here. Probably 8, and people answering 1. Okay, that is fine. This is intended to everybody. It's not intended to be an advanced workshop. So I'm going to try to be slow and explain everything. So if you get bored, just tell me, and I will try to be faster on the explanation. Okay. So then, okay, so we have a blank project there already. First thing we're going to do is basically discuss our development environment. That will be something, because as we need an Elasticsearch and we need some tools and we need a specific PHP version, one of the things we're gonna do today is use Docker for setting up the development environment. So if you look at the link I sent here in master, we have intentionally a couple files that we are going to use to download. It's we have a Docker Compose file. The Docker Compose will define 3 nodes, three volumes, or 3 containers. Well, say we are going to have one container as a Postgre database. If you see, we're picking PostgreSQL 14, and we are defining a couple environment variables for it, like a user that we are going to use later, a password, and so forth, right? So then we are going to export some of the ports. We might not need this at all, but just in case. Then the second container here is going to be the cake PHP container. So you can see we're going to build this container using a Docker file. And the reason is we want to install a couple utilities that we are going to use later. We have here a couple volumes that we are going to link to, and we have a couple environment variables. We're going to discuss now this one, right, which is going to be the way we are actually connecting the cake PHP application with the database. You see, we are defining a database URL, and we are setting up a DSN for the URL, and the driver is going to be Postgre. The username is going to be my app, matching this one here. The password is going to be secret, matching this one here. The container name or the database host is going to be this one, matching this one here. And my app is going to be the database name, matching this one here, okay? So as you can see in one line, and without touching our code, we can inject this environment into our application and define how the database can be connected. So this is pretty interesting for your deployments. In the case you're deploying cake PHP into containers, you don't need to worry about editing files then later. So back to the code here, we have our project. It is blank. We need to pull those files into the project. You can do it any way you want. I'm gonna just copy them here from. Let me copy that line here. I'm actually going to copy 3 files, which is this one. Paste it. Okay. Then the Docker Compose file, this one, and also the database dump, which is this one. Okay, so now we have 3 additional files here. Well, actually, we need to put them in the right place. We need to move them. I don't care about this one, but the Docker Compose should be in the app folder. Let me try to do this right. Into app and the Docker file as well. Okay, so now inside my app folder, I have a Docker Compose and I have a Docker file. If you inspect the files, those are going to be the same that we already described. I'm going to check the chat if there is any question. Is there any question? Not yet, right? Okay, hi everyone. Good, so awesome. So we are going to start Docker Compose now. Using the first shell, I'm going to say Docker Compose. As you can see, well, we have a lot of logs there. We don't care too much about those right now. I usually like to leave the terminal like this to see any logs coming from the containers at the time we develop. So as you can see, Elasticsearch is being initialized, and all the containers as well initialized. You can basically check all the containers this way. If you go to here and do Docker Compose, I actually have an alias for Docker Compose, which is DC because I'm lazy. So it is DC PS, and you will see that all those container names, your Elasticsearch, your PHP, and your database. So how can we access those containers? We can access those containers usually by running Docker exec into them. This is something we can try. So you can see that actually we can, let's run the database container, for example. Docker exec it, the name of the container, which is, sorry about that. Let me check compose PS again. So the name of the container is this one. So then Docker exec it, name of the container, db, and then the command you want to run. In this case, psql. So that's it. We have a my app database, which is empty, has nothing in it, right? Because we just created it, right? So everything good. And then if we go to the other container, we run, for example, PHP. You see we have a specific version of PHP. And if we run bean cake, you see we have cake PHP, right? So actually it is up and running. It's, well, that's the standard message when we are passing no commands. So everything's working there. And the next thing we need to test is basically that the web server is up and running. In this case, we're going to do it using the URL, which is mojo.local. And the port we specified. In this case, we specified 8099 port, right? If you remember, you can see that specification here in the ports section. You can see here that we are defining 8099 port to point to the 80 port internally, which is where Nginx is serving this application. Last thing I'd like to discuss or explain briefly is about this Docker file. The Docker file here we created is very simple. We're going to use this base image, which is going to be a working image for development. I use that a lot for my development environments. You can specify actually the version of PHP you're aiming to, because they maintain those images for us. And the only thing we're doing inside of the image is setting up or installing these two packages. The Tesseract package for providing us the OCR features later on. And this one, Poplar, is providing us a set of utilities for transforming PDF later, because we want to upload a PDF, but unfortunately, Tesseract will not deal with the PDF directly. He will deal only with an image. So somehow we need to convert the PDF first into an image, and then the image be passed to Tesseract, so the Tesseract will provide the OCR, right? So that's the only reason we are using these two are the only requirements apart from the typical PHP web server you could have, and the required extensions for running PHP that we are going to use today. Later, if you want, because we are doing so many things in this container, if you want and we have the time, we can try and refactor the solution to break this solution having only one cake PHP node, and break it to have one web server node dealing only with the website of things, and other worker nodes dealing with the back end of the solution, right? But in that case, we will need to do quite a bit of changes. So I don't know if we will have time at the end of the session. By the way, I'm planning to leave 10-15 minutes at the end of the session in order to answer any open questions you could have. And also, I'm going to be available in Slack the rest of the day. So if you would like to have or post any improvements or questions or what ifs, I'm going to be there for discussion all day. So please go ahead and share whatever you have in your minds. So I see there are no questions. Is everybody understood on what happened up to now? Is there any question about the configuration we used or? Okay, I don't see any questions. So, okay, okay. Awesome. So pretty simple. That's the idea. So we are, once we have the application running, we have a web environment running. The next thing is we're going to use a small database dump. It is actually one table that we want to restore. So actually, well, this is what we are going to do. Let me restore a database dump that we actually pull from the repo. This is going to be the dump. It's going to be basically creating one table documents with a couple columns we can use to play today. It's going to have an ID, an original name, created, modified as always. Well, not always, but as typical, and related file path and status. These are going to be the columns we're going to create, and in order to, well, it is going to be empty, nothing, right? Nothing inside. So we are going to restore the database dump using Docker as well. We are going to do Docker. Well, we actually have it already. We have Docker exec, this one, and I think we don't need a terminal, and we are actually going to cat db dump into it. Right. So we're going to basically cat a database dump and send it to the Postgre database. And well, looks like it is working fine. We have everything inside. Let's take a look again. Now we have a table and a sequence and, well, things logs, etc. So if you look at documents, you'll see, well, all the columns, right? So pretty straightforward, I think. Now we have a database. We have a blank cake PHP. So let's make some tables and controllers and everything, right? So how can we bake it? We can, same thing we did before, we can run bin cake, bake, everything. We just have one table, so I can also see bake all documents. Right? This way, we're going to be baking everything from scratch. The bake shell will generate a number of files for me, like the table. It's going to be generating the entity. It's going to be generating the controller and all the related templates. So now we have CRUD operations ready for documents. You see, well, we can create a new document, and we can view listed documents, etc. This view here, this template is not going to be very helpful as it is right now, because it will not allow us to upload a file, which is something we are going to do right away. But for now, we have a basic application. Actually, the bucket is working here. So you can see, well, you can see everything, especially the queries you are sending to the data source are going to be listed here, and the session, the routing, anything written to the logs is going to be there. Actually, all the environment variables, like for example, the ones we sent from the environment, like the Elasticsearch and others, should be listed there somewhere. And all the variables sent to the view. Okay, so Good. So once we have standard, well, not standard. Once we have the baked templates, controllers, and views, we are going to start actually doing something in the project. So first thing is we are going to work on file uploads. In this example application, we are going to deal with file uploads to the local file system. That is actually a bad practice because we are uploading something inside a Docker container that is going to be destroyed when we finish today. But for today, it's good. There are many options you could use here. The most immediate one would be to create a volume in Docker. So everything uploaded will go to a specific volume. So when you destroy your container, your cake.php container, those files are not going to be lost. The other thing could be, or the other option could be using an external third-party files file system like or Amazon S3 or DigitalOcean files, or well, you possibly are already familiar with those things. So, but for today, we're going to just be uploading to the local file system so we can pick the file quickly and we can process those files later using a queue. So the first thing is we are actually going to change the template, right? Because we have documents add template, this one. So this template is actually adding a lot of information here in the form that we don't need. So we are going to reuse this template to change it for an upload template. In the upload template, we're going to change this and have only one form control, which is going to be a file control. I call it file because why not, right? Then once we define it here, session permissions, why? Okay, sorry about that. Let me try and fix it. See if that works now. Yep, works now. So, well, because of Ring Central, I was forced to set up a Windows environment in order to be able to because my working environment is using Linux, and they don't provide a Linux anymore, which is fine. So I had this laptop from my mom. I quickly configured 2 days ago. So if you see something weird, some symlink or something, it's not me. Okay. So anyways, that's the connection I have. This is actually my development environment, my development machine, which is in some other box, right? But this is not important today, just out of curiosity. So, and that's the reason of the permission, right? Permission issue. So then once you have a form file, you are actually allowed to upload a file. So if you come here, well, one important thing is in order to tell PHP to accept files as well, you need to change here the type of the form and define as type file. Type file, right? Because if not, you won't be able to. So now you can create a new document, you can click here and you can pick any file you have. I just created 2 PDF examples, this one and this one, with some text, sorry, some text in it. So you can click on this one and submit the file. Oh, the document has been saved. Well, that is actually a lie, because if you see you're missing something else, right, for processing, if you go to the request, you will see that if you go to the history, you go to the post here. And there in the request, you will see that we are actually sending a file, right? But this file, it's not saved anywhere, right? We are not doing anything with it. You can see how the file gets in the post data to CakePHP using this object, an instance of the uploaded file, right? With those values. Every time you upload a file, PHP generates, depending on the configuration you have in your PHP container, it will generate a temporary link to it. In this case, the link is this one. So those are going to be the bytes, and there is a media type here, application PDF, that you can also use for filtering your uploads and checking that on the backend again. But well, that's what we get, right, in a post. So what would be the next step? First, the next step would be basically ensuring that this file actually gets processed, right? Because if we save the document, let me go back to the browser. If we save the document here and we take a look at it, we'll see it's empty, right? There's nothing in it because, well, we are not processing the file yet. So let's try and process the file a little bit, and handling the save operation in a before save. Let me check again the chat just in case. Okay, so there are some questions. See there, sorry about that. So I'm checking the questions now. What shell are you using? In my local environment, I'm using C shell, and all my C shell extensions. So well, that's and the terminal you see here. I'm using Terminator, which is a terminal client for Linux I like. And for now, I'm using the shell provided by the Visual Studio Code, right? So the other question is everyone using Nginx instead of Apache? No, a lot of people is using Apache. I like Apache as well. In my experience, Nginx is faster with a typical default configuration, but I'm not checking this recently, so maybe Apache catch up in the previous year or something. Last time I checked, I feel the configuration for Nginx is easier for me to understand. So I usually use Nginx as the default, but Apache is great. I mean, a lot of projects we work on are in Apache, no problem so far. Different configuration and different set of tooling around it, but they are light HTTPD as well is another one, and I usually use one of these two, either Apache or Nginx. And then should we really try to use Docker to create our CakePHP? Yes, why not? If you have Docker Compose installed, you just need to download these 3 files and do Docker Compose up, and you're all set for the workshop today. Then there's a question about a recommendation about the IDE. That is a very personal choice. I think you will see today maybe Visual Studio Code. I don't know, Mark, if he switched to something else, but he was a big fan of Beam in the past, and I use PHP Storm as a daily basis. So that's my choice. Then we have Alex asking if PHP works. Yeah, okay. You're answering actually the question. Right. And yeah, IDE helper. There is a mention to IDE helper as well. Yeah, that is a very good point. We can try and install it if you want to. And IDE helper will be very useful. I mean, if you don't know about the awesome PHP, you should. Okay, so this link is a very important link you have in your bookmarks, but not in my mom's bookmarks. So I'm not gonna add it here. In this case, let me share the link with all of you in case you are not aware of it. So here you can see a good number of plugins filtered, and IDE helper is one of them here in code analysis. So you have a couple plugins you can use, IDE helper, 100% recommended to install in all your projects. Okay, we can play with it later. I'm gonna take note of that. Helper. If we have the time at the end, I will set it up and show you how it works. But yeah, this one is 100% hit in all my projects. I love it, and I thank you very much for the maintenance, because I know it is hard to maintain. So that's it. Let me share that link as well. Yeah, mom's laptop. Yeah. I'm happy that she didn't install any weird Facebook games or whatever here, because that would be popping the screen all the time. So this one is pretty empty, which is fine. Caddy, yep, Caddy was the shell itself would be Z shell. Yeah, this one. This is the one I use locally. And yeah, I would recommend you to take a look at it, especially if you like, for example, if you're looking for a file like cat. I remember the file. I remember the file, but the last thing of the file, I don't remember the beginning. So you can do something like SQL, and you will get it either way. And if you have both files, like TGC, you get the extension, and then you say, okay, it is back, but I don't remember what was in it, so it's backup what, and then you can pick the one you want. I mean, there are many nice extensions on this one, so I would recommend you to take a look at it if you're on Linux, right? If you're not, I don't know if MinGW provides an extension for that for your Windows environments as well, but anyways, just that's my pick, right? Good. So any other questions here? Nope, not all the questions. So looks like we are good to go. So then next thing would be, okay, we just created a form and upload. We are going to process it, right? So how can I process the thing? I'm going to use, there are a couple options here. One fair option would be, okay, we have this link, Awesome Cake PHP. I'm going to go there. I'm going to look for file uploads, right? Oh yeah, we have file uploads. We have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a lot of plugins. So I'm going to get one of these plugins. I usually fall back to this one. I'm going to let's use one of these plugins. So let's set it up and let's get it working, right? That's okay, but not for today. Okay, I'm trying not to deviate too much or try to get into plugins too much, apart from the two we want to know about today. So we are going to do it manually, right? How can we proceed with the code then? I'm gonna think about where this code should be placed. Where should we place some code that is part of the domain of my application and deals with some content that is stored? Well, usually in a table. So we can pick a table for that, and the model table, documents table. And either we can handle that, or we could think about creating a behavior in the case we want to upload many different files to different models. In that case, we will create a behavior, and then we are going to be attaching the behavior to the different tables we want to upload to, right? That could be also a good approach. But in our case, because this is going to be a simple thing, we're going to use just a table to process the uploaded file right after it was saved, or before in this case. So we want to run some code before the table gets saved. So I'm going to create here a before save method, and I'm going to use it to process the file. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to okay, you know, I never remember the syntax for some functions because I'm old. So the thing I usually do is to link to the book. I have a, I find this project very useful. We did a toy, a toy project a couple months ago to just search the book from the command line, and I use it every day for these functions. So I usually search for the book for before save, and I get it there, right? So you can go and have the options here in the book, and then you know that this is going to be the syntax signature for the function. So I'm going to just grab it from here, and thank you. So that's going to be the public function before save, right? It's going to be like that. Then I need an entity interface. I get it. I need an entity. In this case, I know it is a document. So document. I'm going to call it document. I find this way easier to read inside of the function. So I usually try to do it this way. And then we have an array of object for the options. So that would be the before save. So what are we going to do? We are going to, if you remember, we have check questions. If you use Docker in Windows, you might already have, yep, exactly. That's a very interesting comment from F-While. That is the WSL extension for Windows, where you can actually use Linux inside of it. So you can install your preferred C shell and all my C shell extensions. F-While, yeah, you can share it. You know, when you write a comment, there is a drop down on the top. That is all the panelists and participants. Just check that option because we want everything public. So just put it there for everyone. Okay. I'm gonna copy paste. Yeah, no problem. Yep. Thank you again. That's a very good comment. Thank you for adding it. So then we have the before save here, and what are we gonna do? We are gonna process the upload. So this is actually what we want to do. I'm going to process the upload right here, and okay, let me get rid of that. Trying to move a window here on the left. I have my notes on the left, so I'm going to get them ready for. Okay, so well, in this case, we are basically handling the upload. So these, well, first, when do we need to handle the upload? Only when there is actually a file, right? So if document and get file, right? If we have a file, then we actually need to handle it. So we can go and say these handle upload. We pass a document, right? And handling the upload will return a file path, a relative file path. So we want to actually save it for later in the document. So I'm going to do document relative path equals this, right? So now we need a new function that could be protected. Protected function will upload. We get a document as input, and we need to return a string. Right. Good. So what is this function going to do? This function will need to check for error conditions. And if some error condition, we need to report back to the user uploading the file. If no error condition, we need to move the file. So the happy path would be to move the file, right? So the target, we need to actually generate a name, right? So target name equals something, right? Could be, I use this one, upload dash, and then some random text, UID, right? To generate some random text to the right. It's not the best way to generate random stuff, but for today, it's going to be okay, and it is easy to read. So I'm going to use a UUID, and the upload full path will be, and this is something that you typically will push to your configuration, because you don't want to write your absolute path into your database, because your application could be deployed elsewhere, right? So you will possibly want to define an initial or a prefix where all the files are going to be located, and then the right side of it is going to be a relative path that you define. In my case, the full path is going to be just TMP, because we don't care too much. So it's going to be TMP and the target name. Right. And next thing is going to be, let me check the chat in case of questions. Okay. Hi, thank you, Eric. That was actually my next question. I was going to try and catch you, but that is okay. Eric is pointing something very important. I was not doing on purpose, which is also a good source of questions in Slack sometimes, which is, oh, I forgot to add this to the accessible in my entity. So now I'm unable to see it, or I'm patching this, but I don't see this column, right? That usually happens when you forget to do this inside your entity, because we have a document and we actually need to specify the file. True. And now when you patch the entity, which is something that happens, let me save it. Which is something that happens, I don't know why this is, oh, okay. Something happens here, the controller. Documents controller here. When this process happens, if you don't have the file coming from the request data in the accessible list of fields, this entity will never get the file. So when you add it here as accessible, you're basically getting that, right? So you will be able to retrieve the file from the entity, right? So we're there. Thank you for the note here. Let me get back to the chat. So the file, okay. Oh, what is it to use to search the book from CLI? Oh, okay, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, this is a toy project, okay? I think I am the only one using it, or maybe 3 or 4 of us, but I find it useful. So if you do too, just use it. So then, okay, we are handling the upload. Basically, we now have a full path. So the next thing is to basically handle the upload, right? And to handle the upload, we need to get the object of the upload like this. We know there is an upload, but we could check it. So upload is going to be a document get upload, right? And if no upload, then problem, right? There's a problem. Out of bounds, right? Whatever. No upload. We don't care too much about that, but we want to define the upload. Sorry. That way, we want to define the upload as var, and this is going to be an uploaded file interface, like this, right? So, well, out of bound exception, you get that. Out of bounds exception, throw new, right? And now that we have an upload in place, we need to check for errors. Well, let's check for errors. If there are errors, equals upload error, right? If we have one, then it would be wise to do something like this. Set the error to the entity. So we can then display an error message and so forth. File, and then we are basically outputting the error like this. Good. So now we have a document. Now we have some error in it. We can then, we are sure by that point that we don't have any error in the upload, and there is an upload, right? We could check some other things like whatever, right? We get and check an instance off or any other checks you want to do there, but I think it is going to be okay. Yep, I would also recommend PHP Storm. I use it on a daily basis, and it's usually great. And I know that VS Code is great as well, and they have a couple nice extensions, but PHP Storm is my default. So, okay, now we have a path. We are sure that we have an upload, and we can actually use the upload move to, right? Which is going to be handling all the logic or throwing an exception. So the move to will basically ensure that the stream or the file or is going to be actually written to a specific location, which is going to be the upload full path, right? And that should be it. So now we have some error handling. Oh, and sorry, we need to actually return something here, and we need to return the target name, right? Because we don't want the TMP in it. We just need the name we are going to use to assign to the file once it is moved. So we're going to use the target name. Good. So why? So one question is why entity has file and not upload accessible? Well, the reason is that we did use that naming in our form. If you go to the form, you remember we use this form file. File is going to be the name of the column, or the name of the in this case, the name of the. It's not a column, right? It's an object that is being sent. So we need to ensure that this is going to be matching with this here, because if not, the patch entity will not send these to the entity, will not write that into the entity. So that's gonna be a problem. Another way of doing it would be, instead of handling this, well, question for you, what would be another way of doing it? What do you think? Security component. Another way of doing it, I mean, another way of handling the upload, because of that file is not in the accessible. So if we have it this way, let's imagine I have this this situation here. In the document, I don't have this. What do you think it could be another way of passing or handling that situation? Well, we could hack it, right? I mean, we could think about a way of doing a mix of before Marshall or injecting the file after, right? We could think about something like this. After patching, you could say document file equals whatever, right? So there's a number of ways we could do, but the way I use this just basically so I don't need to touch the controller. I can keep the controller as generic as possible, and then I will deal with that in the model layer. Hacksaw. So yeah, well, why not, right? So that let's keep going here. So once we have it ready, let me put this on the bottom, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so once we have it ready, we can try and upload a file and see what happens, right? So I'm gonna try this browser here and new document, exam, browse, open and submit, and no upload. Interesting. So, there is no upload because that is a typo. I think that is what you were confused about, right? That's my fault. Get file, right? So if I reload this one, now I get something, right? If you see the second one, it actually has a reality path in it, which is the one ending in EBC. So if you go to your project, you should have something there in under TMP, upload data EBC, this one, right? Which is a PDF file. Okay, so now we have uploads in place, which is great. Any questions you have up to now? Get back to the chat. Yeah, the exception can never be thrown. Yeah, that's because we are checking that twice, right? We are checking this one first, and we are checking that one again, and that is something I usually do because I'm paranoid. I usually don't trust anything coming from here. We know it is a document because we know it is type safe and it must be a document, but we don't know if this document is if this document has a file or not. So I check it again. In this case, this check is only to ensure that we are handling the upload and not raising an exception. This check here is because the method must have a document with a file. in order to proceed. If it doesn't proceed, I mean, if we get here with a document without a file, something went wrong. We should throw an exception. That's the only reason, just paranoia. Okay. Yeah, let's continue then. So next step is we are going to process something on the background, right? We're gonna do some processing here. We are let me get back to the slide section. We're going to do some processing using a cube. So there are a number of plugins to do that already. There is a good plugin you can use, which also has a good amount of features, which is in the awesome PHP. This plugin is coming from their arrow mark as well. So you can see that here, there. Q plugin. Well, Quesadilla, we use that a lot. Rescue is old, only for Cake 2. It doesn't have the strawberry. And this Q plugin is as well a very good option in case you want to handle queues and have additional features. Actually, I'm using this. Well, actually, if you look at the Cake Fest, I think it is last year. I don't remember exactly, but I remember Marco did already a talk and very good introduction with to the Q plugin. I don't remember if it was in a Cake Fest or if it was in one of the virtual events organized. But yeah, take a look. I'm just introducing this new thing, right? This new plugin, which is going to be Cake PHP. Cake PHP, that one, and yep, this one is working as well. It's actually working on top of well-known PHP library, so it can benefit also from a lot of different transports and clients and a lot of different things that is up and available for this plugin. So I think it is a very good starting point. And it's also easy to install and configure. So we're going to do that like this. Basically, we're going to require Cake PHP first. And also we need to require the transport, or well, the engine we want to use. Okay. Thank you very much. We're gonna go there and say, okay, we're gonna include, or we're gonna require a new plugin. Let's say cd app and then composer require PHP Q. Sorry, was it? Yeah, PHP. And also we want to use enqueue file system. So this is the plugin itself, and this is going to be another package, another requirement that we want to use, that is going to be basically using the file system as a way to store the queues. This is not for production, right? It's not for production. But for today, it's going to be easy to set up. So we don't need to set up a Redis or Beanstalk D or whatever other processing of the queues. We just do composer require and get everything set up. Okay. So what we got is basically, well, some packages here, some dependencies, mostly the Cake PHP and then others from enqueue library. So actually we get this one, file system, that is going to be the one we need for storing jobs in somewhere, right? So the next thing we are going to do is basically ensure that we have the Cake PHP configure. If you go to the site, you see after doing installation, you need to do configuration. The configuration will require loading the plugin first. Let's do that. So Docker cake plugin load cake. That. And once we have it loaded, we need to configure a default queue configuration. If you don't go and configure the configuration, you'll get some error message like this. Okay, you see, well, something is wrong here, and there is a missing configuration. You just need you need at least to have the key there in your configuration, and I think the message will be improved soon. But for now, you just need to ensure that you have a default configuration created. And where can we do this? This can be done in your config app.php. You can put that in the end and say queue. Right? And then for the queue key, you can define any number of queues you want to configure. For example, the default one, but you could configure any other amount of queues. And then for every queue name, you can pass a default configuration or setup parameters, for example, a URL. In this case, we are not going to take it from the environment. We could take it from the environment. Why not? I mean, env, then queue default URL, right? If you want to do it. If we're going to pick it from the environment, but the default is going to be whatever we want. So it's going to be file dash dash and tmp, right? So this way we are defining one queue that is going to be able to accept jobs. The queue will hold jobs based on this engine. The engine is going to be a file engine, and the configuration for the file engine will be tmp as the location to store things, right? So, well, good to know. And we have now the queue plugin configured. What are we going to do with the queue? So we're going to do something like on upload, we are going to push a job, and then in another environment, which is going to be a worker, we're going to pull the job and process. So the upload function, the upload endpoint, will not be waiting for the processing. This processing could be very long because we are going to convert files from PDF to images and then run an OCR. It could take seconds to process, especially if the document is a big one, right? In our application, we don't want the user to wait 3 seconds, 5 seconds. And also, we don't want the web server to handle that payload because the web server is busy enough doing what he does, and he should not be also handling file conversions and OCR text extraction, right? So that's the idea, that we are offloading the payload, the heavy task into a worker, and the worker will do this at his own pace, possibly in another server with specific packages and CPU restrictions and everything. So he will be happy doing that forever, right? And meanwhile, the web application will be serving requests, which is what he should be doing actually. Then once we have the queue, we're going to push some job, right? So once the plugin is loaded, we need to actually push a job to the queue. So that is going to happen here in documents table again, but we are going to do it in the after save. which I don't need to remember because it is the same as before. So I can do public function after save. Okay. And after save, we'll handle basically pushing. So once the document is persisted into the database, and we have a row there in the database, the last thing we're going to do is to send a job to the job queue. So someone, anytime in the future, will basically pull that job and process the document to extract the text. So this is done basically using actually, if the document, the document has a relative file path, right? I think I'm gonna move the chat to some other screen so we can see you all the time. Do that. There it is. Way better. Okay, so then if the document has a relative file path, then I'm going to push it to a queue. Please push job for the document. And again, another method outside. I typically try to leave the callbacks in tables as lean as possible. So if logic needs to be done, I always prefer to see the functions here one after another instead of having a big chunk of code here in the before save. Usually having a big chunk of code here usually flag me to refactor that code inside of a behavior if there is additional code related that we could use, or inside of a protected function at least. Okay, it's also going to be better later when you unit test the method, because you will need you can actually pick one of these methods or mock one of these methods in order to test it before save. So, okay, we have a protected function, push job. The push job will have a document and will return nothing. So push job is actually going to get a reference to the queue manager. This happened to me before. When you add a new package, you need to refresh the IntelliSense here. Let me copy that command here. Let's have it around. This one here. So you need to pass this to it, so it actually refresh the classes in the composer. So now you have queue man. Did it work? Recently used. Yeah, it should work. So the code was then to the queue manager. Okay, it is refreshed now. Queue manager push. So the push will actually require you to pass the job class, which is a class, right? Job, and then an array of data that is going to be sent to the job. This array of data must be something simple that you should keep in mind, anything you push here to the queue is not going usually to a database. It is going to a job queue, which is something lean and it should be fast to move around. So you should try not to put here a lot of payload. So that payload is not moving around the network or basically over the wire for yeah. um, so Casey, yeah, this is incorrectly spelled, but this is temporary. Okay, so it's like XYZ. We don't care right now because we actually want to define first what are we going to push, right? And then we are going to define a job for it. So we are gonna define we are gonna push to something, right? Yeah, yeah. Something, and we are gonna define here that the data we want to pass is basically a document ID. And we're gonna pass a document ID as the document get ID. Okay, if we are paranoid, we should check that the document actually has an ID, but being the ID as required for the document, we are pretty sure that it should have one. If you pass an ID that does not exist, you will have a problem later, okay? Sure, so how can we then create a job for it? We can bake it from here. We can, again, cake, bake, job, and then this job name is gonna be OCR. Job OCR, right? Non-capital. So once you bake your job, OCR job, you can actually use it here. So you don't misspell job like I did before. So you can do something like OCR job, OCR. Where is that class actually? Do I need to refresh again? Possibly. Speaking that from the OCR. Well, it should be there in the inside of source. Let me refresh that. You have job and OCR job, which is going to be the class we need. So you can do OCR job, which is now refreshed in class. Yep. That's usually way better to pass strings that are referring to classes, because that way the IDE will help you and also is less error prone or human or less prone to human errors, right? So, well, that's basically pushing it to the queue. We are just only pushing in actually an ID. So we're gonna need to retrieve the document later. So we are going to do it right inside of the OCR job. We are going to execute something here. This is the method you need to implement in every job when you're using GigPHP Following the interface, you can return, in this method, you can return three things initially. You can return an ACK, like everything was good, remove the job, just don't do anything else, right? We also have a reject, which is, okay, the job failed, but I don't need to do anything else. It's just failed, right? And then we have requeue, which is, for some reason, we need to process these later. This requeue, for example, is useful if you're dealing with an API, an external API, for example, and you're pushing things to the API. Let's think about Twilio, or right? If you're pushing SMS to Twilio, at some point Twilio will be sad about it and tell you, hey, this is just too much. You're exceeding your API rate limits. When you check that in the response, you can just requeue the process for later and wait until Twilio is able to accept more posts, more requests from you. So that's a use case you could use for a queue. And for now, just ACK. So here in execute, we are actually going to do all the logic we want to do, right? I see my clock. We have 40 minutes. So I'm going to try to be faster a little bit, at least to get to indexing the file. So basically what we are going to do here in the execute is actually nothing. I usually try to do almost nothing in the job itself, but the logic required to extract and prepare the data for a specific function in the model layer. So usually what I do here is I get reference to load the table, for example, using the locator aware trait. Use locator aware trait. So I can do something like these fetch table document and OCR, and I pass the message get argument document ID. I usually get this as an integer because I know it will be, and then return ACK. So if anything happens here, what I usually do is actually capture the exception, the try catch. Exception, and then log the exception, right? Log it and throw or return processor reject. Yep. In this case, I'm not trying to recover from my exception status. I'm just logging it and then rejecting the job, right? So I need a new function in the documents table, which is going to be called OCR public function OCR having an integer ID or just ID because I am in documents table, and OCR is returning nothing for now. Exploit. And actually, we're gonna do stuff here. At this point, when I develop something based on a worker and jobs, I usually try to stop here and log something like log write error doing stuff, right? And try it, because when you are implementing something with a worker, you need to test that the jobs are pushed and retrieved correctly in one side, and then in the other side a feature, right? So I try to split that in two steps. The first step is that the job is landing somewhere, and the second step is that actually I'm doing whatever I need to do inside of the job. So I go here, I have this in place. The next thing we need to understand is if I run my code, let me run my code. And hi, Hussein, no problem. We are getting a recording, and we are going to send the recording to all of you after the sessions, so you have all the content. Thank you for attending today. So then we get there again and upload a new file. Let's say this one, open, submit, and nothing happened, right? Why? Because, well, something happened. I'm actually going to show you. If you look at your TMP folder, you will see new files here. You will see this file, which is new, and you will see this log file, which is basically a file that is used for a worker to log in while processing the payload, right? So this file here is basically your job queue. It's a long JSON encoded file with all the jobs that we are pushing. Actually, we have only one job. This is the class of the worker and the method we're going to use. And these are the arguments. We only have one argument, that is document ID equals 3. And then some additional data that is passed, like the topic of the queue, the priority, well, all the things that could be useful for us in the future. But for now, the standard behavior we see is that we are pushing something to a queue. Then the queue engine is basically writing a file, updating a file in the file system with some data. And now we need a process to actually do something, right? And this process is a worker. And a worker that is shipped with the plugin. So if you run bin cake, you will see one of the things you can run inside of the KQ is a worker. So let's run the worker, and we use -b as verbose. If you run with -h for help, you will see all the parameters you can use in the worker. Like, for example, if you want to override the default logger, or if you want to set up some next attempts, jobs, runtime, etc. Right? For now, we are going to use verbose as the option. So when we run the worker, you will see output happens. Actually, the output is going to be that the worker is letting us know that we are receiving something, right? We are processing the job, and at some point, we actually get the message processed successfully, right? So we are actually doing something here, right? That's argument 3 document. So we have everything in place now. If we do Control C, you see that we catch a signal and then finish. If you see using the worker, running the worker this way, the worker is going to be listening forever unless you set a limit to it. I would recommend you to set some kind of limit if you're using this in a long-running system, because PHP is traditionally not good with memory leaks, and you could end up with a dead worker in some months. And also, I would recommend you to put some kind of daemon to monitor that the worker is alive. You have a, where is that doing stuff log? Okay, let's see that. Let's be more aggressive, possibly in the logs, but I should see that in the logs as an error. Let me check. So, but to finish what I was saying, ensure that you have something like monit or something like systemd or some other beanstalk watching over your workers to be up and running, so you have the ability to restart the workers if they go down, or send an email to someone. So where is that log? Yeah, that's a good question. If you see, let me remember the OCR job. We're running OCR, and there could be an exception, right? Passing OCR, it could be an exception here, maybe. And are we reaching this code? Let's see if we are reaching the OCR code here in the documents table. Are we gonna die here or not? Yep, I assume that as well, but let's die there, no problem. And this one, and submit. So we're not reaching that, so there must be an exception before. That's what happens when you don't log the exceptions. Let's go back to the OCR job. We're fetching table, running OCR. So what is the exception here? let me log message. See if actually, if there was actually, oh, maybe the problem is that it's not saved. Sorry about that. The problem is this file because of the permissions. The file was not saved. Let me fix that. One sec. Okay, that should do it. Now I'm able to save the file. Sorry, when I bake files, I have a mismatch in the user I'm using, so it actually is gonna die now. But yeah, that's a good catch. If we are unable to save the file, we are not gonna be able to process it later. Thank you for that. Submit and doing stuff. Okay, so this is actually what we wanted, right? We finally are not dying. We were logging, doing stuff, which is there. Awesome. Oh, this comment from the remark as well. I like to use cron tab and restart. Yes, that's a very good idea. Meaning you need to have something. It could be something simple as a cron tab, as a cron job in this case. I like the idea of the cron job. It's easy to set up. Everybody has cron jobs, so why not? And you usually define here when you run the worker, you usually define here a max amount or a limit, like a time limit, and then you let the worker to restart them. That's it's also a good way to keep your workers fresh because you don't need those processes to be up and running forever, right? Good. Well, you need them up and running forever, but you don't need the same instance. You don't carry instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go through the export operation here so we can handle that. I'm gonna basically copy the OCR processor. You have the OCR processor here. I'm gonna just bring that file because that's a lot of typing and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish if I do it, and then I'm gonna explain what I did because that is actually running a couple shells, so it's not very relevant for the content of the workshop. So stake fast, and I'm gonna get this file from here. You see we have source and model OCR. So this is a small class I just created for handling the OCR processing. It is basically checking if there is a file. And if there is a file, it's gonna setting a batch ID, converting the PDF to PNG, extracting text from PNG, and building the index. Building the index is something we are gonna do together right after. But for you to know, I'm gonna use this as a base and then explain. So I'm gonna create a new one for it. Get this. I'm gonna set it up in model OCR processor. So I'm gonna create a new class here under model, new folder OCR, and then a new class OCR processor PHP. And this file is gonna be like this. So what is this class about? This class will provide a constructor where we define properties as well. We define a document, a batch ID, and the extracted text, the final text we get from the PDF. So it will implement an OCR method that will basically check that there is a file there. And if there is a file, it will generate a batch ID. This batch ID, the idea of this batch is because you will need this batch at some point, because you will need to process every page of the PDF. You will need to export page by page into images, and then use the OCR on those pages, and then merge the text back into the index. We don't need to do this today, because I'm gonna simplify the use case to PDF files with only one page. Okay, but this could be the starting point for generating a batch where you can put all the files inside and then merge the text in the batch later. So this set batch ID is a setter, not a big deal. Convert PDF to PNG is basically running this command. So PDF to PPM, it's one of the commands we installed, and we are basically converting PDF to PNG, right? I think it's pretty straightforward. Yep, very wise comments there in the chat. Please take a look at them later. Yep, long running workers are tricky, especially on the deployment at deployment time, because you need to wait for them to shut down. Yep, that's a very good call. So then, going back to the logic here in the OCR processor, there are two commands. This one, which is PDF to PNG, and the other one, which is very similar, is running tesseract on it. So we are going to run tesseract in the PNG and then generate a file, extract it. And build index is doing nothing for now. Build index is doing nothing for now. Let me comment that out, because I'm going to use it later. So how this class is intended to be constructed, and the method OCR to be called. So if we go to the documents table, OCR will do stuff. We will do a new OCR processor, and we need to pass a document, which is going to be this get ID. That's a document. We are not going to pass any batch ID or anything like that. I was looking for it. I didn't find it. The question was, is there a decent tesseract PHP SDK? I didn't find the SDK. Maybe it is there. I didn't find it. And actually, what I found was I think it was Python API on top of it to deploy a server accepting REST for tesseract. But I think that was killer for the training session today. So for the workshop today. So I decided to just go for exec and run it from the command line. Yep. Well, if anybody is able to find it, just let me know. I don't use that a lot, but would be nice to have a PHP wrapper, so we don't need to call exec in the command. But for now, this is what we have. So new OCR processor, equals that. Once we have it, we can call the only method we have for it, which is OCR. Right. So now let's try and see what it's happening, right? Let me run the worker again for those, and well, I cannot reset. Let me reset that now. Just waiting, and this one. So going back to the site and uploading something. Upload this one, submit, and now, well, there's some processing here, doing stuff. We are pulling PDF to PPM, right? We are selecting the file and then the output, and then we are using Tesseract to process the file. Okay, so if we inspect now the TMP, under TMP, we should have a batch. Let me check the batch, F9. F9 would be this one. So you see, we have a PNG file, which is this one. This is actually a screenshot of the Cake PHP book, right? Not a big deal. Then we have the extracted text from the image. Okay, so question is there a convention that objects should be camel cased? Which one are you talking? This one, for example, OCR processor. I don't believe there is a convention for that. I do capital on table names, though, but I don't think it is a convention like documents. I think it is just old style. Yeah, OCR processor. Do you remember? Anybody remember about a convention naming the objects as capital? I'm okay with that. Why not? Good. So, okay. Yeah, no, I think it is updated as well. But why not? Let's innovate. So then we have already a text, right? We just generated a text file. The next step would be to insert. We did OCR processing. The next step would be inserting that into an Elasticsearch index. We're gonna try as well to be simple here as a starting point. We are not gonna deal with any document or anything. We're gonna just work with an index, and we're just gonna push the text as it comes by into the index, so we are able to find it yet. We can, yeah, it's a good convention. Good. So let's finish the processor here, OCR processor, and we have class there, and last method build index is this one. But in order to get this method working, we need to also configure the Elasticsearch plugin from the core. So let's do that. I'm gonna get rid of this for now. I'm gonna set up the package from the core. Then this case, it's gonna be composer required, composer required, php search. Nice. And once we get it, we are also gonna need to load it, and it's gonna be load what cake. Let me check the name of it. Elasticsearch. So it's cake Elasticsearch like this, and as well, we will need to define some kind of data source configuration for it. So if we go to the config app and we get to the data source, data sources. Like there, we are defining a new data source. We're going to call it Elastic. And the data source is going to be like this. So basically, we are going to use a URL and pull the and pull it from the environment. So env, if you remember, we did that at the beginning. It is there in the Docker Compose file. Compose file. It is defined here. And you pass the connection, the server, the port, and the driver at the end. So this is going to be good. So now that we have the plugin loaded, we are able to start generating an index. So if I remember correctly, there is no way to bake it, but let me check that again. Try to bake, I think there is no way. No, there's no way yet to do it. So we need to create a class from scratch, but we're going to create under source model. We're going to create a new folder called index. And then the index will have only one index that we are going to call documents index.php. And the documents index is going to be a very simple file because we have no configuration for it almost. So we just php and namespace. So we have index, and we are going to have class index. Nope, this is the wrong index. We need to do the trick again. That, let me do this and reload because we just pulled a new composer package and it will need some time. Stands index and index now is the right one, right? Cake Elasticsearch index. We are not going to configure this in any way. Well, actually missing the find types. Street types. I never need to write this one. Declare. Huh? This is from Turo Pascal or something. Happens to me. Okay, 10-minute wrap. I'm wrapping. So this is going to be the class, and the processor is going to be like this. We are actually going to run it. I'm very old. I'm glad being old, actually. So then build index. Build index is going to use a factory locator to get the Elastic and the documents index. And index is managed as an entity. We are actually creating the index this way and passing an array of raw data. We are pulling, we are creating a new entity. Don't confuse this entity with the actual document, right? This document is not a document entity. It is something that we are going to push to Elasticsearch. So we have new entity here. We can pass any content, like for example, the extracted text as content. And additionally, we are passing a reference that we can use later to navigate the original document ID and saving the document to Elastic. So if I save it, let's rerun the worker here. Worker, let me get to here, save it, new document, sample, open, submit. We get there, message processed successfully, so I understand that it worked. So how can I see if it works? Well, we can build a search page, a very simple search page by query that is going to be in Documents Controller. Here, public in search, having the content or a query, right? Well, let's call it query. Request query queue, and retrieving a document index. I'm going to copy the factory locator again, like this, right? So we have the document index, and then we use the document index as a table, and we can use the method find documents equals documents index. We can call find, right? And we can pass a where like content is and a limit, whatever. Right? And then we can do these set add documents. Right. So we just need a view template. Under templates, documents, we create a new file, which is called search.php. We go for it, search.php, and we can write something like this. I'm not gonna spend the time on writing it because I need some time for questions, if any. And for all the documents, we're gonna link to the document data. So we go back to our site and we say documents search, and we pass a query string, which is going to be configuration, and we get this document. But if we upload a new document here, like this one, open, submit, I need to have the worker working, worker is working. And if I go to the search page again, look for configuration and only get this one. But if I look for after save, was it there? Oh, after save. Yeah, I need to do non-capitals. Then I get document 8, because document 8 was this one, and this one was related with the other example file we have. I guess you believe this is true, right? But let me show you the document there in the uploads. Would it be the last one, which is 56? So 56 in TMP, this bundle, this is a document, and the document has a different set of text, not having the word configure. So, well, that's it. We did something. Questions? How old are you? I'm old, already told you. Any other questions before we wrap the session today? Did you follow up to here? Was that clear what I did? I know there is some magic on how those plugins work, and especially the way that Elasticsearch connects with that, but it's this is intended to be a starting point. So if you have a curiosity and you find some use case for that in your own companies, it's okay for. Okay, well, thank you very much for your feedback. And there is a question. Sorry, what's the difference between using a cron to process instead of a queue? Well, a cron is a time-based processing. So you will wake up the processing every X number of minutes. A queue will allow you to basically distribute those jobs into different machines or have immediate processing. Some requirements in sometimes we have use cases in web applications where you need to process something immediately because it is actually going to be pushed back to the front end. So you need to have a very fast queue, which is actually triggered immediately, and you cannot wait to the next minute when the cron job wakes up because the user is not going to be there waiting a minute. So yep. The next question is why it works with after save. Why it works with after save, not after save. Was that a typo in my code? Check that. No. What is working with after save? Ah, okay. You mean the search string? Okay. Yeah, because the text as you see there, possibly it is not it's not configured to be case sensitive or to take case sensitivity in place. So the search query must be in non-capitals. You could try and do something else. Okay. I never recommend in production anything that writes to the file system. Logs, sessions, jobs, anything. You should not be writing into the file system. It is slow, unreliable, and it's not easy to scale. So if possible, always use Redis for sessions or job queues or a database, or well, if you don't have a lot of jobs, you can use a database for that. That's okay. But thank you everybody. I'm on time. Okay, so thank you everyone for attending today. I hope that was useful. See you around. I'm going to be in Slack. Thank you.